the rule issue that came up. In the time of the Sahaba, whenever a new issue would come, the time of the Khulafa Rashidun, they would call the council, the Ahlul Badr, for example, the people of Badr, or the major scholars from the Sahaba. They would get together, they would try to convince each other. They would also debate, they would also differ. They had different opinions on sometimes certain issues, but then at the end, they would give an opinion to the Khalifa. This is what we think is the opinion. At the end of it, the Khalifa would be in charge whether to accept that opinion or to go with a different opinion based on what he thought was right. So in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, what madhab was the Muslims following? The madhab of Abu Bakr. Because there's no Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki. These are later. What are the Muslims following in their fiqh? They're following whatever Abu Bakr at the end says. This is what, we're not talking about Quran and Sunnah issues. Those are decided. We're talking about fiqh now. New issues that are coming up. So after making shura, after making ijma, Abu Bakr would decide. In the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, what madhab are the Muslims following? The madhab of Umar ibn al-Khattab, because he's at the end going to say, we do this or we don't do this. Whenever there's a difference of opinion, you have to choose one opinion. You cannot get all opinions, right? No, you cannot make everyone happy. Same thing happened with Uthman, with Ali radiyallahu anhuma. That is the second stage. So up until the second stage, what are the sources of Islamic law or fiqh? Quran, Sunnah, Ijma. Then starts the Banu Umayyah dynasty for 100 years. The Banu Umayyah, starting with Muawiyah and then so on, radiyallahu anhu. In this time, a fourth source was added. And that fourth source is qiyas. Why? Because ijma became difficult to attain. Islam had spread all over the Muslim world, the now Muslim world, and people in different areas, they did not have communication with each other. So there were ulama, for example, in Spain, who did not know the ulama in Tirmidh, in Iraq. Ulama of Turkey don't know the ulama of India. There's no communication, right? Because they didn't have internet like we do today. So what started happening is schools started developing in different regions. Okay, one here, one here, one here. And now, because ijma is not possible, so the scholars started using personal opinion. Qiyas based on analogy. Whenever a new issue comes, they go to the Quran and the Sunnah, say what is the closest issue that we can compare this new issue to. Whatever the ruling of that is, we are going to apply it to this new issue. Qiyas, analogy, okay? Critical thinking, ijtihad. This is what we call ijtihad, where an alim would sit down and would look at Islam, look at the ahadith, look at the Quranic ayat, and then try to see what principle will be used for this new issue that we are dealing with. So, fourth source of Islamic law is added. Then comes the age of the major Imams. Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, okay, and many, many others. Today we only know four. Today we only have four in the world. But in the time when these Imams were living, there were hundreds of madhabs, hundreds of schools in different parts. Okay? There are some scholars which were even considered, for example, Imam Layth, who was in Egypt. He had his own madhab, own school of thought in Egypt. And Imam al-Shafi'i, he said about Imam Layth, Layth is greater than Malik. In his opinion, Imam al-Shafi'i was a student of both. He studied under Imam Malik and he studied with the madhab of Imam Layth. And what was his opinion? That Layth, his understanding of the deen or the fiqh is greater than Imam Malik's. So that shows he must have been an outstanding scholar of his time. But his madhab did not survive. Today we don't have a Laythi madhab practiced anywhere in the world. And we're going to talk about what were the factors for some of the madhabs which survived, what happened to the other ones, which were also famous at one point in time. So the major Imams come and then the minor Imams. Minor Imams are now the students or the students of the major Imams. And we said there was a shift in attitude towards Islamic law from the major Imams' time to the minor Imams and their students. What was that shift? In the major Imams' time, there was flexibility. There was understanding that my opinion could be wrong, your opinion could be right. They used to give room. Okay, they were humble. Okay, just because I'm saying this doesn't mean I know everything. They understood, for example, many hadiths had not reached their area. If all the hadiths are not known by an alim, isn't the alim handicapped? If a new issue comes in and he doesn't have all the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, he has to use maybe 50%, 60% of the hadith are available to him. He will make rulings based on that. Maybe in a different region, other 40% which are missing here are available there. They will make rulings based on that. But 60% are missing from there. So the ulama, they had flexibility. They were students of each other. They learned from each other. There was great respect for each other. There was not this fundamentalism or dedication to the madhab. It was not like my madhab and your madhab. It was not my fiqh and your fiqh, my scholar and your scholar. That was not there in the time of the major imam. By the time the minor imams came, which are the students or the students of the students, then factionalism started. Muslims started getting divided into different factions. Court debates would start happening, where the governor or the king, he would bring a Shafi'i scholar, bring a Hanafi scholar, and give them an issue and debate. The debate is not for the purpose of learning, but the debate is for the purpose of entertainment. Competition. Entertainment, right? He's challenging you to give you some competition. So when that started happening, what would happen now to the fiqh schools? They started competing with each other to win the debate. Because if I lose, then that means my madhab lost. My scholars lost. So I have to win. And if I have to win, then I don't care about right or wrong. What I care about is how I win. And I have to put you down as my opponent. So this kind of factionalism started in the Muslim world. This is in the age of the minor imams or later. And even until now, we are suffering from this. Even now, and I'm going to talk later, for 600-700 years, for example, the Hanafis, they would not marry with the Shafi'i. This is Sunnah, Ahlul Sunnah, right? These are all groups from the Sunnah. But they were fatwa given that if you are a Hanafi, you cannot marry a Shafi'i. Meaning you are treated as a non-Muslim. You're recognized as a non-Muslim, even though these are all Muslims, based on the fiqh, debate and the competition that was going on. For 600 years in the Kaaba, there used to be 4 imams for every salah. 1925 is when it changed. It's not very old. 100 years ago, if you were living, you went for Hajj or Umrah, you had to choose which imam will I pray behind. If you're Hanafi, go on that side of the Kaaba, your salah is over there. If you're a Shafi'i, go on this side of the Kaaba, your salah is over here. Even now, if you see old pictures of the Kaaba, you'll find these structures, small masajid, musallas around the Kaaba, which was then cleaned up. And now, alhamdulillah, we are united again. We're praying at least together. But there was a lot of factionalism which took place in these last 700-800 years of the Muslim world. And what was fiqh was changed into Sharia. What is the thing which we cannot change? We cannot challenge. The Sharia, we cannot challenge. Fiqh, can we challenge fiqh? Can we say, scholar such and such, we disagree with your opinion. I think the scholar such and such is right. Yes, we can, because it's humans. They can make mistakes. Somebody will have strong opinion, strong evidence. Somebody will have weak evidence. You have to do that. But what happened in the later centuries because of that factionalism? If my scholar said it and my madhab said it, I'm going to die believing it and die promoting. That became the attitude. What was so flexible became rigid. And that is the problem. When research stops in an area, you cannot grow. Today, if you look around the world, in dunya, I'm not talking about the deen. Which are the countries which are on the top of the world? Countries which have research. Research-oriented countries. Because they are always ahead of the game. Whether it comes to weapons, whether it comes to training, whether it comes to human disciplines, research, 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 and they keep growing. Which are the countries which have stayed behind? There's no research. For example, in the Muslim world, up to the bachelor's level, undergrad level, you'll find our students are better than American students. Brilliant students we have in the Muslim world. In fact, when I came to the US and I started going to the college, for the first 2 years, they were teaching stuff which I had done 5 years ago. I'm like, this is America? This is American university? I already know this stuff. I've done it 5 years ago in my high school or even before that. We are way ahead up until bachelor's level. Where do we start going down when it comes to higher study? We have no funds, no research, no projects, no money spent in research. That's why we stay behind. And they attract all the minds. America, for example, will attract all the brilliant minds around the world because they'll offer jobs, they'll offer research, they'll offer positions, funding, this and that. Whereas our students, they stay behind in the Muslim countries because of the same application is with the deen. If you want your deen to be on top, you have to be ahead of the game. You have to keep the research going. Islamic scholars have to keep researching. As time is changing, culture is changing, new circumstances are coming, Islamic scholars have to keep rethinking. Okay? The fatwa which was given 600 years ago might not work now. Things have changed. But the problem is what? Because we became so rigid, we are still following the same fatwa. No matter what happens, generation after generation, the same fatwa is going on and on and on, and nobody wants to research anymore. Nobody wants to challenge that fatwa anymore. That fatwa has become like Sharia now. So this rigidity is what was one of the reasons of the decline of the Muslim world. Up until the 12th, 13th century, Muslims were on top of the world because of this attitude of research, attitude of I could be wrong, let me challenge myself, let me ask questions, let me find the answers to new problems. But once we stopped doing that, we went into the taqleed mode, which is blind following, where the scholars stopped asking questions, okay? And then the result was what we have today. In the age of the minor Imams, two more things were added to the list of sources of Islamic law. So what are the four so far? Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas. Okay? Now a new concept which was istihsan or istislah. In different madhab, they call it different terminology. Let's look at that once again because we went over this last time. Let's talk about this concept a little more so that we can understand. So the English translation of this is legal preference. Legal preference. This principle involves the preference of an opinion based on a circumstantial need over an opinion based on qiyas. So this is where instead of going with qiyas opinion, you go with the opposite. So you compare something in the Quran and Sunnah to your new situation, right? Your new situation is similar to what is in the Quran and Sunnah. And Quran and Sunnah has a ruling for it. For example, Quran and Sunnah says this is haram for that situation, the old situation. So you say for the new situation, this must also be haram because they are similar, right? That is qiyas. But istihsan is where you say, even though it is similar to that situation, we are going to say it is halal. We are not going to go with qiyas, with comparison. Why? Because of a community-wide need. If we are going to go with qiyas, we are going to cause damage. We're making it very difficult for the people to live their life. And that can never be the goal of Sharia. Sharia came to make our life easy or hard? Easy. Sharia is never going to, Quran, Sunnah, Islam is never going to make you unnecessarily burdened. Always wants to improve our life. But if you use qiyas opinion, it might cause harm to the people. That's why instead of going with qiyas, we're going to do the opposite of qiyas. And that is what they call istihsan or legal preference. This principle, referred to by various names, scholars of most schools of thought use. Example, istislah is another word that they use for the same one. An application of istihsan is seen in the contract for the manufacture and sale of an item. According to qiyas, based on the Prophet's statement, the hadith is, whoever sells food should not do so until he has it in his own possession. This is from Sharia now. If you have food and you don't have it with you yet, you cannot sell it. You first have to have it in your possession, and then you sell that food item to somebody. But that hadith is talking about what? Food items. Can we apply it to other things? Let's say I make furniture. I'm not selling food, I make furniture. I don't have the furniture yet in my possession. Can I sell it to you? Qiyas says no, you cannot, because if you compare it with the hadith, that would mean all other issues similar. You cannot do that, right? That would be qiyas, which was applied for many, many centuries. Contracts of this type are invalid since the item is non-existent at the time of the contract. Why is it haram to sell food items which you don't have? Because you're counting on having it, but you don't know if you'll have it or not, right? And you cannot do that. In Islam, financial transactions have to be based on surety. Not like I don't even know if I'll have grapes tomorrow with me to sell, but I sell it to you tonight. Then I'll see if I get it, I'll give it to you. If I don't get it, then it's a problem, right? So this is the reason why the Prophet forbade it. However, since such contracts have been universally accepted by people and the need for such contracts is obvious, the ruling by qiyas was dropped and the contracts were allowed based on the principle of preference. An example of that would be a company which makes fighter planes. Each fighter jet costs what? Hundreds of millions of dollars, just one, to make one. Now you come to me and I am the maker of these planes, and you say, I want this, I want such and such plane. Am I allowed now to make that contract and sell it to you and get the money from you and then deliver it at a later date? Yes. According to istihsan, yes. But if you use qiyas, then no. Because the Prophet said what? You cannot sell food items unless they are in your possession. But the problem is, if you were to say, first make the plane. Let's say I made the plane first. It cost me 300 million. And now you refuse to buy it. Now it's a big problem. It's a big harm to me as a person, because I've spent like not just few $100 or $1,000. I have spent millions of dollars manufacturing these planes. And now you come and say no. So what happens is, the way it works is, and this is a universal practice worldwide, first you pay. You have to pay first, or at least pay a certain amount to guarantee that you will buy it. And then it will be manufactured for you and delivered for you 6 months, a year, whatever like. This is how it works. So the scholars, when they came up with these new situations, they said, if we went with qiyas, it will ruin the businesses of people. It will not work. So we will go with istihsan, because the Prophet did not say this about other items. He said about food. His wording is about food items, which means with other things, if it helps the people and it makes their life easy, then such sales are allowed. And this is what many schools of thought they develop. Any questions on this fifth one? This is a little bit harder, but I hope you understood, right? Istihsan, istislah, they call it different names. The last one which was developed in the time of the minor Imams was the urf, or custom, okay, which you can say was there to a certain extent even in the time of the major Imam. For example, Imam Malik, what was his definition of sunnah? How did he define sunnah? Which was different from the other schools of thought. The others said, no, this is not sunnah, but he said, no, this is sunnah. What was that thing that he said is sunnah? Anyone knows? We have discussed it before. Anyone remember? No. Imam Malik's definition of sunnah included something which other scholars disagreed and said this is not sunnah, but he said this is sunnah. That was the culture of Medina. Culture of Medina. Imam Malik said whatever people in the Medina are doing as a culture, it must be from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because who are these people in Medina? They are the children of the Sahaba. And if they are all doing some practice, then they must have learned it from the Sahaba. Where did the Sahaba learn that practice from? From the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the problem is we don't have hadith for it. We don't have proof for it. But everyone's doing it in Medina. So he said it must be the Sunnah. So he included the culture of Medina as part of the Sunnah in his opinion. The other scholar said, no, wait a minute here. This is not Sunnah because maybe this was a practice that they developed out of other sources, not from the Prophet. Maybe the people in this city used to do those things even before Islam, right? Every country, every city has their own culture, right? So that's not proof that the Prophet, is the one behind it. So there were debates between Imam Malik and other Imams during his time. So even in the earlier times, we find a glimpse of urf or custom as used as one of the sources of Islamic law. Local customs were accepted as a source of law in a given region as long as they did not contradict any of the principles of Islamic law. For example, local marriage customs concerning dowry payment. Today, most of the Muslim world, when people get married and meher time comes, in the contract you have to write the meher, what do most cultures do? Most cultures do meher, muajjal and muakhar. Muajjal is going to pay right now. Muakhar is something delayed for a later time. Where does this come from? Is this the Prophet's sunnah? The way when the Prophet got married to his wives, did he do that? Did the Sahaba do that? No. They didn't do the marriage contract like that. Their meher was not like that. It's a cultural practice which came in the Muslim world. But the Islamic scholar said, it's okay. Why? Because it does not go against. You're not doing something against or contradicting what the Prophet did. All you're doing is you're dividing the meher. You're still paying the meher. You're dividing one part. Now, one part later, both parties have agreed to it. It's fine. No problem. So this is an example where an urf practice becomes legal in Islam because it does not contradict the other sources. It does not contradict Quran, doesn't contradict Sunnah, doesn't contradict Ijma, doesn't contradict Qiyas, doesn't contradict any of the other sources before. So the dowry meher according to Islamic law must be agreed upon as part of the marriage contract, but it has no set time to be paid. It is the custom, for example, of Egyptians as well as other cultures that a portion of it, called muqaddam, may be paid before the marriage ceremony, while the remainder, called the muakhar, is only required to be paid in case of death or divorce, according to whichever occurs first. Another example of urf can be seen in rental customs. Islamic law does not require the payment of a price until the thing being sold has been delivered completely. However, it is accepted custom that rent is paid before the rented place or object has been used for the agreed time period, right? When do you pay your rent for your house? After the month ends or beginning of the month? Beginning of the month, but you have not even used the service yet. How come you are, paying for it? Because that's the custom. Once again, it has to do with the guarantee that the owner of the house needs or the owner of that thing needs. If you are going to use it and then not pay, what will happen? Then the owner is in trouble. So Islam wants to protect the rights of everybody, including the owner, the landlord. So rent is paid before, even though it is not the way of the early generations. It's a custom, it's a part of the urf practice that came into Islam, which is fine. Although this process of organization and classification was, for the most part, positive development, nevertheless, when coupled with the prevailing trends towards factionalism, it served to further widen the gaps between the madhab. Now, the same thing which can be used for the benefit of people, you can use it also for the harm. So, because different regions have different cultures, you can also use this for what? To divide people. You can say, in my culture, we do it like this. I don't have to do anything with you. You guys do it different. We are better than you. Right? You can bring culture now to destroy the community as well. So you have to be careful. This is what happened too. So for example, currently we are going through this phase of nationalism in the world, which is form of tribalism. Right? In the Prophet's time, each tribe, Jahiliyyah, they used to boast, my tribe, my people, my family, right? Today we do the same thing. My country is better than your country. We all think we are superior because we come from this country or that country. This is factionalism. No, as Muslims, we cannot treat each other like this. Doesn't matter where a Muslim comes from. Muslim is beloved to me. Muslim is special, respected to me. Doesn't matter if he's from my country or not my country. You will find, for example, in social gatherings, when we have social gatherings in the masjid, you'll find people start going into these groups. You said it, I did not say it. I want to be on record, I did not say this. Brother Khalifa is the one who said it. So if you have any problem, talk to him. I did not say that. I just said that this is the practice of many people, that they tend to stick with their own country, their own nationality. So now imagine somebody who's not from that. Some brother or sister comes to the masjid, he doesn't belong to any of those countries. How would they feel? What about our convert brothers and sisters who accept Islam and then they want to be part of our community and they go here, this is one country, go there, they don't have any country there represented. These are things we have to be very careful about. Same thing, the Prophet, peace be upon him, for example, told us when two of you are talking and a third one joins, what should you not do? Huh? Not whisper, not start talking to each other and neglecting the third one. One of the ways, easy ways you can do it is start talking in a language he does not understand. Right? You have a brother right next to you, standing next to you, and you start whispering and talking to each other in your own local language. Of course, you have excluded him right now. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful. That's why one of the things I love about our masjid is the diversity. Okay? We are all together here, alhamdulillah. But we also have those leanings, right? And it's natural. I can understand. You are more comfortable, right? You feel more comfortable with the one who understands your language, your culture, your jokes, your, whatever. But we also have to make effort to include other people. So one of the things I would recommend is whenever you come for iftar this Ramadan, try not to sit with the group which you are part of usually. Try to force yourself sit in a table of a different group. Try to talk with them, bond with them. Because the group you are with all year long, you will still stay with them. Don't worry, they are there. But try and focus on those brothers and sisters who are sitting alone, who have nobody to talk to. They have no cultural representation in the masjid, because we have some cultures which are not represented too much. We don't have a lot of people from those communities. And those brothers and sisters feel very uncomfortable when they come and join us. So we have to make effort for that. So the urf thing can also be a problem if you misuse it. Thus, we find slight variations in the terminology given to the same principle that led to friction and opposition. Any questions here on the 6 sources of Islamic law? We good? The Maliki madhab considered the Hanafi principle of istihsan unacceptable, yet applied the same principle under the name of masalih mursala. This is, the factionalism. This is factionalism. So what does the Maliki madhab do with the Hanafi? The Hanafis are the ones who go with istihsan. They call this istihsan principle, right? Maliki said, no, this is wrong. But they did the same thing themselves, only changed the name of it. They call it masalih mursala, meaning the same thing, where you give legal preference due to a community benefit that will be derived. While the Shafi'i madhab rejected both these terms and applied a similar principle called istishab. They said, no, both Malikis and Hanafis are wrong. This concept is not right. But we are right, and they came up with a new term for the same exact thing, and that is istishab. So that shows how the animosity was in the later years between the different scholars of the madhab. Okay, now we look at a summary of this particular stage of the minor Imams. Fiqh took on a definite shape as an independent Islamic science during this period. Before that time, the fiqh books were kind of merged with hadith books. But now you started having separate books on fiqh from each scholar or each madhab and so on. The many madhabs which had appeared in the latter part of the Umayyad period flourished, and the centers of learning increased throughout the Abbasid state due to state patronage. For the first time, the fiqh of the various madhabs was successfully compiled on a large and systematic scale. Fiqh became organized and divided into two main segments: usul, which are the fundamentals, and furu, which are the secondary principles. So this terminology also came in this time, in the fourth stage. Usul, which are the fundamental principles on which you build your fiqh rulings, and furu, which are the branches, which are the secondary issues or principles. The Sunnah in its entirety was also collected and recorded in books of hadith by the end of this stage. So this is the major development, is that by the end of this stage, the hadith books were fully ready for people to now avail. Before this, all hadiths were not available, as I said, in every region. But now, fiqh books compiled, authenticated, this is sahih, this is maudu, this is weak, all those classifications were done by the Islamic scholars by the end of this particular stage. During the first half of this period, the madhabs, under the guidance of their founders, continued to experience a great deal of mutual exchange of ideas. However, under the second generation of students, there was a trend towards rigidity and a breaking down of flexibility. Any questions on this particular stage before we move on to the next one? Well, the thing is, the madahib themselves are not the problem. The problem is the attitude you have of the people who are leading those madhabs. The same madhab, when they are in the founding fathers' hands, they are thriving, they are doing well. When Imam Abu Hanifa is in charge, when Imam Shafi is in charge, when Imam Malik is in charge, everything is good. Muslim community is together. They are debating, they are learning from each other. There is mutual acceptance and respect for each other. Problem comes in when your attitude towards a certain thing becomes rigid and you become less flexible, which is what happened over time. So madhabs are required. I don't want anyone to go out here thinking that I am promoting that we don't need the madhab. We need the madhabs because they have done hundreds of years of research, which we are benefiting from today. In many, many areas, they have given fatwa that are good fatwa, which are applicable throughout time. We need the madhabs, but what we don't need is the rigidity. What we don't need is factionalism. What we don't need is I am right and you are wrong all the time. Okay, my madhab is always superior to your madhab. Okay, I am going to blindly follow everything from my madhab and reject completely everything from. This is the problem, which it's an attitude issue, not the issue of we need ulama. How else are we going to learn, right? If we don't have ulama, can you and I just open the Quran and start making fatwas? Do we have that ability or knowledge? No. We are not ulama, we're not scholars. We need people of knowledge to help us, give guidance. But the problem is those people of knowledge, they need to have the right attitude towards fiqh, towards sharia, towards the community. For example, one of the things I highly discourage, not completely, but to a great extent, is whenever we have issue, for example, here in America, some new issue comes up. We start getting fatwas from overseas. Fatwa from this country, that country, about issues which are here happening with us. That's not a good idea. Why? Because those ulama, they don't live here. Even if they try their best to give you the best opinion, they don't understand the culture. They don't understand the circumstances. They don't understand the needs of the community. They don't understand the challenges we go through. You need local, homegrown ulama who live in this culture and they have knowledge of Islam, good knowledge of Islam. And then they can combine. Just like if we give fatwa to them for those countries, that would be wrong. Because we don't know their culture and understand their circumstances. So it's not enough just to have Islamic knowledge. You also have to understand the situation of the people. Because how are you going to connect the two things together? How are you going to connect your Islamic knowledge to the situation of the people if you don't even know the situation of the people? It's just like a doctor who's very qualified, but he doesn't understand what the patient's problem is. What will happen? He's very qualified. He'll give all the best medicine. He have all the knowledge of the medicine, but he does not diagnose the problem. He's bad at diagnosing the patient's problem. So he gives you, you have heart problem and he gives you kidney medicine. What will happen? The same thing happens with many of us when we start importing fatwas from different regions, because many of those ulama, they don't understand. And this is something which I realized not in the first few years, but after living 20 years in America. That's what I realized. First few years, I used to have different opinions. I used to think, these people here, their Islam, questionable. I would rather go with those people. And I still, when it comes to Aqidah issues, I still prefer the ulama of the past and the ulama, because that's where Aqidah is fixed. Aqidah is not going to change, right? Problem comes in fiqh. Fiqh we have to be careful about. And I'm not saying that everything that local ulama tell us is right. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, you take one opinion, two opinions, three opinions, five opinions, but those who understand the situation. And absolutely, if some of the ulama, they travel a lot, they understand the situation back and forth, then yes, you listen to them. But somebody who has never come to the US, never experienced life here, and they start giving fatwas of life here, it becomes a little difficult for them. It's just impossible for that person to realize the extent of our problems or situations. Any questions? Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. That's very true. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because an alim is going to give fatwa based on the information he receives from you, right? If you are not giving him full information, or you're giving him selective information, parts that you want for yourself, then the fatwa will be according to that. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Cancel it. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Big trouble. Yeah. 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 I mean, it's not that it's okay, it's that we are in a situation of being forced into it. If I have a choice today that I take my insurance or not, I will not take my insurance. Right? Yeah. That's why, for example, things like life insurance. We have option. We don't have to have life insurance. We should not have life insurance, because this is based on a system of exploitation of people. Yes, brother. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You have. That's what I'm saying. It's forced upon us. We don't have a choice. Yes. Medical insurance now it is. Many years ago it was not required by law, but now it is required by law. Yes. That's a difficult question. The question brother is asking for those online: what makes a person qualified to give fatwa? Okay. This is a difficult question. So as a minimum, I would say minimum, the person has to have knowledge of ulumul Quran, the sciences of the Quran, which include Arabic language, command over Arabic language, not Arabic of today, but Arabic of the Quran's time, because that's the language the Prophet used, right? He didn't use today's Arabic; he used, the Arabic of his time. The Quran is in that Arabic. To have command over tafsir, to have command over the seerah, how did the Prophet live his life, to have command over hadiths, okay, the sunnah tradition, to have understanding of the different fiqh rulings of the past, okay, to have understanding of the people that are asking for that fatwa, okay, in their situation. Um, yeah, those seem to be like the minimum, the very minimum kind of requirements. Because your question is basically who is an alim, who do we consider a scholar of Islam, right? So those would be the very minimum requirements. That's why most of the people who think they are ulama, they are what they actually are tullab, students of knowledge. For example, I consider myself to be a student of knowledge, because an alim is a very that's way up there, way above our kind of understanding, and so we are not there. We might be imams, we can lead, we can give khutbas, general guidance, we can connect people to the fatwas, for example, or I can convey to you what I know from the ulama. But for me to make my own fatwa, to make my ijtihad, that requires more knowledge, much more knowledge. I mean, most ulama are, because it's a natural thing. If you're going to become a scholar of tafsir and you have not memorized, it doesn't make sense. Usually you will go the other way around. You first memorize and then you become a tafsir scholar. Yes. Local fatwa for that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 I mean, the thing is, we have now Islamic options available. Oh, you're talking about if you don't get approved with the Islamic option? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, my question, follow-up question to those people who say that, what is the ruling for that is it a need or is it a want? Do we need a house, to buy a house in our name and own a house? Is that a need? Or is that a want, a desire? I want to have a house. My understanding is it's not a need. And if it's not a need, then you don't need to even ask that question, because not at the cost of riba. Yes, you should try to secure your future, but not at the cost of something which is clearly haram. Right? Riba is not one of those minor things. Riba is from the kabair, right? So it's like asking, can I murder somebody to secure my future? What would be your fatwa for that? Because murdering somebody is major sin like riba, right? So we don't ask that question because we know the answer for that one, right? So my understanding from even the local ulama is that it is not a want, it is not a need, it is rather a want which many people have. I know some brothers who are, both the husband and the wife are earning in over $100,000, but they still cannot afford to buy the house. They are living on rent for the last 20 years. They're paying rent because they don't want to get in riba. Their life is okay. It's just like people say in this country, oh, you cannot live without a credit card. I don't agree with that. I have lived over 20 years in this country without having a credit card. Who says you cannot live without it? It's just some of these things we justify. I'm not saying you cannot have a credit card, by the way. There are fatawa which say you can have it as long as you don't give riba on it, right? There are others which say you don't. But what I'm saying is this credit system, which we feel we are so dependent, we need this credit system. We don't need this credit system. And I know people who have lived long periods of time without getting into riba, and they are renting. Just rent your house, you're secure. What's secure? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, um, if you have food for the day and you have roof over the house and your family is healthy and secure, you are a king. You are a king. So we are more than kings and queens living in this country. We don't need all of that stuff, but we think, yes, I need to secure my future. I need this plan. I need to do this. You don't need it. Allahu Akbar. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's a good question. Why did the later scholars become rigid? And there is more coming in the other sessions, inshallah, in the future we're going to talk about. But the quick answer to that is that it is a natural phenomenon when there are rewards at stake, when money and power comes in, politics comes in the picture. The earlier scholars, they stayed away from politics. Like Imam Abu Hanifa, his fatwa was that an alim should never be on the payroll of the government. That's his fatwa. If the government tells you we'll give you money and you work for us, says no. Alim should never, ever be on the payroll of the government. So the earlier ulama, they were not after this political, But the later on, not all of them. I don't want you to leave thinking all the ulama of the later period were like that, but many were. Okay, they went for power. They went with the government to please the government, to please the ruler, to get positions of authority, to be appointed as a judge over this city or that city, to be appointed as a governor here and there, to get wages, special money, win prizes in those debates. So it is a natural phenomenon. If you open up anything to business, you make it a business, then you're going to have competition. People will try to put each other down, try to stand on each other and go up. So this is one of the reasons which happened. The later scholars gave in because when the madhab grows big, then you'll find all kind of people in it, right? In the earlier times, you have one alim, Imam Abu Hanifa, he has few students. Now those students, each of them have 100 students, 1,000 students. Now when the pool will become bigger, now you will also find people who are corrupt will join, people who are interested in politics and power will join. So it's a natural phenomenon. The same thing happens, for example, in communities when we come to the US, for example. You will find in the beginning, when the mosque is small, there's a lot of unity. People are together, they love each other, there's barakah, they're making effort for this. Everyone is volunteering, nobody's paid, right? Everyone's volunteering. Now the masajids grow. Now we have thousands of Muslims in a city, tens of thousands of Muslims. Now masajid start splitting. There is more money coming in. Now you start hiring people. Okay. Now the volunteers have problem with the one hired. The one hired has a problem with politics comes in. As the organization grows, politics is bound to come in. That's why you always need strong structural rules in place to keep everybody intact, because it's bound to happen that you'll get people who would go in that direction. Allahu Alam. And there are other reasons that we'll discuss later. Any other comments or questions? Sisters, anything? Are we good from the sisters section? MashaAllah, sisters are always calm and peaceful. It's like the brothers are the problem. Yes, sister. Sister Wasima. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's expensive. Yeah. And that's what happens in the credit system. You'll find people die and they leave behind huge debt for their children to pay afterwards, right? Because what's the average time it takes to pay a mortgage in this country? 30 years? 15 to 30 years, right? Depending on how much you're. So, I mean, that's like half your life is spent paying the mortgage. And then by the time you pay it and you are old now, you are in your 60s or 70s or whatever, your time is coming close, and now your family members are going to, basically live in that house. And if they are united, they will have barakah or whatever. Otherwise, you know what happens when you leave behind a lot of property for the children, then the children fight for the property afterwards as well. So there are, I mean, once again, I'm not saying it's haram or anything. If somebody wants to buy houses in a halal way, grow their business, do as much as you can, no problem. But Don't go with these options of riba because they're going to ruin your life. They're going to take away your barakah. They are very sinful and dangerous options. You will find, by the way, fatwas around the world giving justification. It's okay to do this. In your situation, it's okay to do this. But really, your heart will tell you that yes, the fatwa is allowing me to do it, but I shouldn't do it. I should protect myself from it. Yes, brother? Anyone else? Mm. Yeah, yeah. That's not good. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Subhanallah. And that's why we say that no matter how great an alim is, and we should always respect ulama for their effort, for their lifetime of effort. Even if we disagree with the fatwa of an alim, we should not forget that this is a person who has spent their entire life studying Islam and benefiting people. We should make dua for them, and we should respect them. But no matter which name you bring from Islamic history, the greatest of all ulama you bring, and you will find somewhere they have given a fatwa or said something which is way off or is off track, and other ulama have then pointed out those mistakes later on. Because this is human being, we all make mistakes, and alim is also human being. Like you said, it depends on what information the alim is being fed, their own background, their own understanding of issues, and so on. Sometimes your personality also plays a role in the fatwa you give. Some people are more on the softer side, some people are on the stricter side, so it will reflect in their fatwa also, how they understand the issue. Anyway, so I think we've gone way ahead of ourselves here. I wanted to get into the next stage, which is the madhabs. Now we are going to, inshallah, next time, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of the four madhabs and some other popular ones from that time, and we're going to study how they were unique and why they are different from the other madhabs. What made them different from the other madhabs, and how these particular madhabs developed, which of them continued, why they are still there in the world today, and the other ones which died down, what was the reason for them not continuing afterwards. So I think we'll stop here. Jazakumullahu khairan. Any final questions? There is Brother Abdul Hamid is saying, pass my salam to all brothers and sisters. So, salam from Brother Abdul Hamid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Abdul Hamid. If you're watching us, our salam for you as well. May Allah bless you. Any final thoughts? Okay, subhanak Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.